This breaks down even worse when you look at the non-Hispanic Black population and the Latino population in Memphis. It gets significantly worse. And as you can see, there is a distribution of the poverty around this kind of this C shape of poverty around here, which coincides with a relatively heavily non-white area of Memphis. So there is a race issue to all of this as well. And here you can see in the same C area where there are people who do not have cars. Obviously, out in the suburbs, everybody has cars. But in this area, the C-shaped area here, you have a lot of people who have no cars, no easy means of transportation other than public transportation to get whether to work or to medical appointments or to get a COVID shot. How many of the COVID vaccine sites are car only? A lot of them. These people don't have cars. And once again, that's where you have the poverty. And this is looking at 2018 data, the median income of people who used a car to go to work in Chicago was roughly the same as those who use public transportation. Chicago has an amazing public transportation system. But in Atlanta and in Memphis, those who use the public transportation system have median earnings of half. So why is that? That's because Chicago has put a lot more money into their public transportation system. It has become convenient for everyone. And here is the real kicker: commute time. If you have a car, you in Shelby County, you can count on less than half an hour average commute time. If you're dependent on public transportation, it's almost twice as long. And all that time is time that people cannot be working, cannot be taking care of their children, cannot be going and getting food. This is wasted time. And we are stealing it from the people who can least afford it. So once again, people who are dependent upon public transit right now, because our transit system is not up to the quality, and I'm not even saying of a relatively wealthy city like Chicago. I lived 10 years in Monterrey, Mexico. And Monterrey, Mexico has a much, 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 much more useful public transportation system than Memphis does. There are very few parts of Monterrey where you have to walk more than 3 blocks to get to a bus that will take you to a light rail which will take you to virtually any sector of the city and another bus to get you within 3 blocks of where you're going. Here, without that kind of intense public transportation system, people can't reach jobs by bus. They can't obtain employment in the places where the buses don't go. They can't keep their employment because they miss shifts, because they're late, because there aren't enough buses. Students have challenges getting to school. Not everybody lives in areas that have decent transportation to school, and the grades suffer. And there's all sorts of other family hardships. As I was saying, if you don't have a car, your opportunity to get vaccinated for COVID plunges. This has become a public health issue, not just an issue, a public health emergency. And I understand that there are limits to how many people can be on a bus at this time because of COVID. But we need to stop and think about how we're going to handle this going forward. It's not just COVID, it's everything. As they said, it's food deserts, it's employment deserts. We are starving the people who can least afford it. And that is where I'm going to stop. And are we going to take questions now, or are we going to hold off towards the end as kind of a panel thing?
We're going to hold off towards the end.
Okay.
For our next speaker, we have Suzanne Carlson.
Hello, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And tell me if this doesn't work properly. Slideshow from beginning. Okay. So thanks for having me. I'm also going to set a timer, but feel free to give me the hook if I carry on too long, get too excited. So I was working with Innovate Memphis when I did the work I'm going to talk about today, and now I'm actually in Nashville. Hate to say that to everyone in Memphis, but I work at TDOT, so they had me move over here to take a new job as the multimodal director with TDOT. So several years ago, let me just go ahead to the next slide. When the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan process started, we had the opportunity to step up as Professor or Greg Blumenthal, sorry, I don't know if your title is professor, as he so eloquently spoke about, this is a really critical issue in Memphis, transportation and getting people to opportunities. So we had an opportunity to get some funding early on in the Memphis 3.0 process to address transit and to really rethink what the transit system looked like and to think about what it could do and to sort of divorce it from how you think about the bus or who uses it or who provides it or what colors it is, all that. We just really tried to refresh and think about transit through a fresh lens. This is the process we went through with a consultant team that we had on board. So starting in September 2017, we went through 3 phases of public engagement and discussion around what transit meant to the community and how we could redesign it and what sort of investments we would need to do that. So let me go back in time for a minute here, and these are slides that Innovate Memphis has used to sort of talk about a lot of issues facing Memphis. This was Memphis in 1960, and this the dots represent population, so people per square mile. That was the footprint of Memphis back in 1960, and it was a pretty dense community. You could provide a lot of services at lower dollar value. You could just reach a lot of more people, and people could reach a lot of goods and services with shorter distances. And then what happened, I think we all know in Memphis some of the context of what happened in the 1960s and Martin Luther King's assassination and kind of the ripple effect that had on the culture and community, and people left the central areas of the city and really started building more homes and communities outside. And so this red area is now the footprint of the city of Memphis today, and that's the same population. That's really about the same number of people, but now spread out across 323 square miles. So 1960, 2010. So think about providing transit service to that area. I'll talk real quickly about that. This is kind of how we framed those trade-offs. This is a fictional city. This is the work our consultants did to talk with stakeholders and the public about how we might design transit. So in this fictional city, let's say you have 18 buses and you can choose how to deploy them to best serve the community. This is one option. You can take all 18 buses and put them on the two main routes. Let's call these routes, I don't know, Poplar and Third or something, just for example. So you could put all your buses on those two routes. You'd have a really simple system, Route A and Route B, and it would come every 10 minutes. You'd know the bus was coming. You wouldn't have to consult a schedule or think too hard about it. You would just walk to that bus route. And if you had to transfer to bus B, you'd just jump on that bus. Within 10 minutes, it would come and take you. But you can see there's some gaps. We're still using the the dots for population. And you can see that some people aren't that close to transit and they're going to have to walk. So the bus is going to come faster, but you're going to have a little bit of a wait. The other way to do it is put the buses closer to everybody. So now the people who lived in those gap areas have a bus coming near them. You could get on bus C. You got to figure out what time it's coming and go around and catch bus A. These buses might come at weird times like 8:57 and 9:42, and you might miss the bus. And I think Greg talked a little bit about this challenge. And this is a lot of what how the Memphis transit system looks today, or looked at the time we did the study, I should say, and some of the challenges and the frustrations that people have, although the system covers more of that footprint that I talked about from 2010. So don't think about this slide too hard, but what we did is looked at these trade-offs of you could provide more coverage to that geographic area or serve more ridership with faster service, serving a higher density of people and jobs along those main routes. And then the cost, do you want to spend more money or save money? Those are some of the decision points we made through those 3 engagement phases. We did a lot of stakeholder outreach. We did public surveys at each of those stages. We had a stakeholder committee of more than 60 people, and it wasn't, usual suspects of just business community. It was a lot of nonprofits, education leaders, faith-based, a lot of different community leaders, and we had a lot of community events. We were able to gain a lot of media, and we also advertised on radio, buses, news sites, and social media. And for radio, we did target communities of color. We thought that might be kind of a different way to reach folks that might not be reached through other media avenues. And I think one of the most important things we did was we were out in the communities one-on-one. We had tablets and we were in the transit centers. We had a sub-consultant who did some work for us, who's a native Memphian and really was pretty smart about where to go and where to find people and to get engagement, particularly among the Black community. And so these are some of the places where we went. Places where people were doing tax preparation for low-income people, food giveaways for some of our partner organizations. So we got pretty creative and we got out to where people were, not just where we wanted to be. It was more important to go where they were. So here's just some photos of presentations and our stakeholder meetings. As a result of that engagement, this was the inclusion that we had from our outreach. We had great representation from transit riders. This is usually one of the first questions we get. Did you talk to transit riders when you developed this transit network? Yes. This is showing in green the average population in Memphis of this demographic, and then the representation in our survey. So we had 24% representation of transit riders of the people who took our survey. Average income was lower than the Memphis average. We had an average income of $32,000 of people who took our survey. I think something like 30 to 35% of people who took it were low income. Average age was 30. White people were underrepresented, if you want to look at it that way, less than the representative number of the population. And then we have fantastic participation from African Americans, 65%, slightly more than representation in the population at large. And we thought that was really important. So let me just go quickly. My time, getting close on time. So this is what the Memphis transit system looks like. I'll just say in 2017, because I know it's changed a little bit. The MATA is working towards a lot of the changes that we proposed through this system. The color scheme is that red is a frequent transit system that comes every 20 minutes or better. If you look hard, you might see some red on this map. Blue is coming every half hour, green is coming once an hour, and the tan comes less than once an hour. So maybe just rush hour, maybe every 90 minutes. These are just really irregular ones. The main thing you see is in purple there, we've got the Poplar route, which comes about every 20 minutes. And then if you could see the trolley system downtown, that comes about every 10 minutes. But there's not a lot of high frequency like that first example I showed of a transit network in the fictional city in the current map. This is how we designed it. We put the money into a high frequency system running on 4 main routes in the city. So Union feeding into Poplar Avenue, Lamar Corridor, um, Third, and then the other one is Cooper Airways to Cooper to Hollywood. So in the fictional city, you could take one route that comes frequently and hop on another one to get crosstown, and you can reach a lot more places a lot more quickly, access a lot more jobs in this proposed network. This is going to cost about $35 million extra dollars each year to run, and that's mostly going to drivers. The biggest cost of the transit system, a lot of people think, oh, bus size or sort of overhead expenses, but it's really the drivers. It's the people, thinking back to that 2010 map that's all spread out, right? It's the time it takes for drivers to get back and forth on those routes. So this is the proposed network. I'll just show some of these benefits, and I know we want a strong focus on equity with this group, and I'm really impressed with the work and the focus of the conversation you guys are leading here. Again, the scheme here is that what you're seeing in red is a frequent bus route. The blue, I think in this one, is every 60 minutes. So a bus coming every 60 minutes or better. The green is any bus at all, and the gray is no bus service within a half mile of residence. So the top charts you're looking at is the existing system and then the proposed system. How many residents have access to frequent transit? So you're seeing the red increases. With that investment, you get a lot more people close to frequent transit, about the same number having access to hourly transit and all-day transit, and a little bit better overall. Jobs increases, one more minute, jobs increases much more significantly, the number of jobs that are near that high frequency transit with about the same service overall. And then here we've got the minority residents. We benefit about the same number of minority residents as the city as a whole here. I want to say it's slightly better, but it's pretty close. How many people of color could have access to the high frequency network? And then low income people, it's even higher. So the new network that we propose serves low income people at, I guess I'll say, at greater numbers or greater benefit and time value of accessing those jobs that we showed on the last slide. And just real quickly here, in I think it was our last survey, we asked people if the system worked better for them, for their neighborhood, and then for the city as a whole, knowing that not everyone takes transit, but we wanted to see if they were supportive or felt that it would benefit. And these are the results here. I won't read all the numbers, but essentially the numbers go up as we broaden the question to where 78% of people said the new network would work better for the city. And here's the good news where we queue up Mayor Harris coming on next. They're willing to pay for it. So 77% of people were willing to pay either $4 or more per month or $1 to $3 per month, with only 23% not being willing to pay more for the system. And there you go. So I'll stay on. I can address some questions later. And I've also got some of my former colleagues there in Memphis who are on the line and can probably help out with this effort going forward. And I'll turn it back to the presenters.
Okay. Our next presenter will be Cynthia Bailey from the Memphis Bus Riders Union.
Hello, how are you all doing? Thank you for having me on here as well as the group. You have to excuse my audio because it's blinking off and on, it's disconnecting and connecting back. So I'm not sure what's going on, but I'll try to make it briefly to stay on. So we the Memphis Bus Rider Union here in Memphis, Tennessee. Our organization started in 2012 on February the 17th. What we do is we go out and we connect with the community on issues that we're having for public transportation here in Memphis. I am an organizer and I am the co-chair of the Memphis Bus Rider Union. I would also like to say Sammy Hunter is the male co-chair of the Memphis Bus Rider Union. So we have our meetings to the public opening on the third Saturday of each month, but because of the COVID, we have to delay our meetings. But we still stay connected with the community. I still go out and get information, and but we have a lot of issues that's going on. For one, is that because of the COVID right now, it's very hard. People are losing their jobs. We have talked and spoken with people, riders, and a lot of them is having a very hard time. Where Mallow have 10 people per bus, But I think if they do that, they need to like congregate, have extra buses out here. Because we have got on the media, we have connected with the city officials to try to get support and help with issues that's happened here in Memphis. So, I mean, the issue to me is the change of routes continues.
Miss Bailey, I think your audio cut out.
No, it says she left. I think it kicked her out.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll wait a few moments to see if she gets back on. And if not, we can go ahead to Mayor Lee Harris.
Yeah, let's move on to Mary.
I think she's just on mute.
Oh, she is. Okay.
Okay. Can we unmute? We can ask to unmute.
Yeah.
Who? Did we ask? I don't know. I don't know if
Sophia.
somebody
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully she will, her audio will begin working again.
In the meantime, if you guys have had any questions or thoughts so far, feel free to drop your name in the chat and we will unmute you in a little bit when we have the Q&A section.
Okay. I do apologize for the inconvenience. Okay. To save time, we will, if Mayor Harris is here and willing to speak a bit early, we will move to him.
Sure, I am here and happy to go at this time. So thanks a lot for the invitation, and I'm happy to talk about transit and to participate and so forth, and I'm looking forward to hearing the youth voices at that part of the program. I'll say that I've been mayor of Shelby County since 2018, and Shelby County, which is
Mayor Harris, if you can still hear us, I believe your audio and video have stopped working. Okay.
It appears he was kicked out of the meeting. So, but I think Cynthia Bailey just got back into the meeting. So, okay, we got this. Miss Bailey, can you hear us? Would you be willing to finish your presentation?
Okay, I do not know if she has fully rejoined yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Okay. Miss Bailey, it doesn't show a mic next to your name, so if you could leave the meeting and then rejoin, I think that might fix the problem.
Yes, but I guess
We got a question in the chat.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's not Q&A yet, but we can for sure answer a question because we are having some technical difficulties. That could fill some time. Yeah, Carter Jürgen, what's your question?
Okay, well,
In that case,
In that-
let's move on to the student section. Our first student testifier, Edwin, was unable to join us tonight, but we have a video from him that we can play for you all. So let's get it pulled up, and then we can screen share.
I think there is a question in the chat, and probably it's for Susan Carlson. And that's actually was on my mind as well.
I
Somebody
can
can
answer
read
that.
it.
It's about, I'll just go ahead in the
Light
interest
rail.
of time. It's about light rail. Light rail is best when you have a really high density. Think more like a Chicago or a Memphis has about 3,000 people per square mile, and Chicago's got more like 12,000, and that's an environment that works a lot better for light rail. So we're not there yet. I think bus rapid transit is much more appropriate to sort of build up that density, like Matt is getting ready to do on Union Avenue. It's a lot more affordable and faster to deploy. It doesn't have as much time and complication to build it. So it's a great, direction to go, but it's probably not the best solution. And I'd also say that, regardless of what the vehicle looks like, if the transit's running, it's going to get you there. So if you start with buses, I think you can build up a good system.
Thank you so much. And we did notice that Mayor Lee Harris rejoined the meeting. Are you able to finish your presentation?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll be brief. The short of it is we tried to get the county involved in transit funding. Our proposal was about $10 million from the county toward transit. I think MATA is about a $60 million a year organization or so. So $10 million a year would have been impactful. Wouldn't have been enough, but it would have been impactful. And for us, there would have been a variety of benefits to that additional investment from the county. Number one, we would have been able to, help to really raise the profile of climate change and those kinds of issues. One of the real causes of climate change and one of the solutions is actually tied to transit. So one of the causes is fossil fuels and our reliance on cars and so forth. One of the ways you can do something about the over-reliance is to make sure you've made transit available and accessible to as many people as possible. So transit would have helped with some of our climate goals. And so that was one of the huge benefits of the county getting involved, in my view. In addition to that, again, the $10 million would have added a number of rides. Each one of those rides would have gotten a number of cars off of the roads, and it would have expanded the frequency of routes. It would have been consistent with the transit vision planning process. And so overall, we thought it was a great idea. The idea of making an additional investment in any public asset for government always raises one obvious question, and that question is, well, how do you get the money? Where do you get the money from? And I think all of you know already the answer to that. The only way to get money for transit is to tax. And so that's what we in fact proposed. We proposed a tax, and we proposed a tax that that I thought was appropriate. We proposed a wheel tax, and a wheel tax is basically an extra fee that you pay when you register your vehicle. And so again, if one of our goals is to make sure we raise the issue of climate change, and we know that one of the contributors of emissions and the decay of our climate is cars, then maybe if we charge folks a sustainability fee, which is what it was called, a sustainability fee when they register their vehicles, maybe that'll be the way to go. Maybe that'll match problem to solution. And so we proposed a $30 car registration fee called a sustainability fee that people would pay in addition to their usual registration costs. And that would be the way we raise the $10 million or so for MATA. Unfortunately, it's like all taxes, it's very, very hard to convince the public to pay more in taxes. And so we're still working hard on that. I mean, the numbers with respect to MATA are high, but not quite high enough to generate the political will for people to tax themselves. So when you think about MATA's ridership, the Matters ridership probably comes in at about 20,000 riders per day. And 20,000 riders per day, or 6 or 7 million riders per year, sounds like a lot. But you've got to remember there are 950,000 people in our metro, in our county. We're the largest county in the state, and again, nearly 1 million people live in our county. So if 20,000 people ride a MATA per day, well, that means, you know, there's 930,000 people that live in Shelby County that did not take a MATA that day, probably. And so again, 98% of our county do not use MATA bus at all, and 2% of our county use MATA's buses. And so if you have an issue where 2% of the population use the item and 98% don't, you have a very, very, very tough political road ahead. And so, you know, we worked really hard to try to generate political will to do it, but we did not succeed. And so we're going to have to come back to that. When it comes to the politics of investment in transit at this juncture, we've got 2 options. You can change the message or you can change the messenger. When it comes to changing the message, one idea is to go smaller. So instead of $10 million, you would try as best you can to go for a more bite-sized investment in MATA. So maybe that investment is $1 million extra a year, or $2 million extra a year, or $3 million extra a year. Something that is small enough that maybe you know, people would tolerate it. So that's one idea on changing the message. Another idea on changing the message is just part of the conversation y'all just had, is you don't have to always go small to change your message. You can go larger, and going larger would mean something like, you know, don't go for 10 million, go for light rail. And maybe if you go for light rail, you will expose yourself to some additional support from areas or constituencies that, you know, previously were pretty quiet on the issue. Maybe they can see themselves taking light rail, whereas they could not see themselves taking buses. And so, Suzanne is right that light rail is probably not the best practically speaking, but politically speaking, it might be a way to approach transit that is more sellable to the public. The other option at this juncture, talking political wise about generating more money for transit, is to change the messenger. And so our office worked hard to try to generate that issue, but if you had different messengers, they may have a different result. Sometimes it's just a matter of the messenger. So while we might not have gotten the required momentum, that doesn't mean that youth who participate in the process may not generate some momentum. That doesn't mean that there's not other stakeholders that have not come forward who, if they got involved, might be able to generate some momentum and get some transit investment funding. So that's what's going on the county side. I really appreciate you guys having this conversation. It's an important conversation. It is a hard issue. The politics are hard. I think I've already kind of demonstrated that, because it's an issue that in a lot of ways, unfortunately, feels like a 2% issue when you're out there carrying the ball. And so we've got to make sure it doesn't feel like a 2% issue going forward if we're going to get something done politically on transit. Thanks again. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation.
We have a few questions in the chat if you'd be willing to answer them from some of our participants. Okay. The first one, the first one is from Leo Arnold. He wants to know if you're prepared to continue seeking adequate funding for Transit Vision 3.0, and if so, what is your strategy?
I think you said, am I going to keep trying? Yeah, I'm going to keep trying. The current strategy we're talking about right now is a bite-sized approach. Just try to go for a smaller investment in transit, something less than 10 million. I should say it wasn't all for naught. When we made a run at transit, when I came into the county mayor's role, we did get the county to invest in transit. So the county invested, I think, $3.5 million during that run at it, and set aside about $1 million per year that goes into transit. So we did have a success, because now transit is on the county's books. We just didn't get quite as much money as we wanted. So if we want to keep on going that route, again, we got 1 million. We got 1 million at the first run. Actually more than 1 million, but you know, at least dedicated a minimum of 1 million every single year. And so you can kind of keep shipping it, that keep adding. So that's one of our goals, is just keep shipping at it. What other questions?
Nabil had a question. Do you want to ask your question to the mayor?
I got a question too, whenever y'all finish.
Okay, Mayor Harris, I really applaud your your strategy, and I am one of those who actually, when you send a survey about having taxes, I'm of those who responded to the survey with positive way that yes, you can have my taxes to improve the infrastructure. But right now we have a lot of COVID relief money and funding, and since COVID relief deals with issues that has to do with respiratory diseases, the same thing actually with carbon dioxide emission that do cause a lot of respiratory problems. You know, I don't know if you know, the new number is now like about 8.4 million people worldwide are dying because of respiratory issues because of carbon dioxide emissions. So is there a way for us to write a grant in which you can get money from the COVID relief to divert it to build a better infrastructure for the routes that are present in the buses in Memphis? The reason I'm saying this, because what Susan was talking about earlier regarding the routes, a lot of time actually the reliability of the bus driver coming on time and delivering things on time is very much in doubt. And I don't know if you remember when I think Tia took the bus from downtown to the agri center to show that the people that if you were going to go vote using the bus, it's going to take you 6 hours from downtown to the agri center. So that's, I mean, something like this, you know, that we need a better, more efficient bus routes and probably more studies to improve them. So is there a way for us to get like money from the COVID-19 relief? That's
Yeah, that's a great point. And the short of it is there's a lot of COVID money coming in. So the county gets, we're going to get probably $90 million on the county side. And we're probably at the low end. In other words, there's a good chance the city will get more than that. And we know the school system is going to get significantly more than that. So between those three organizations, City of Memphis, the county, and the school system, there are, you know, quite literally hundreds of millions of dollars that will be received in terms of COVID spending. And so, yeah, that presents an opportunity to talk about transit infrastructure and maybe do something big. I think the problem is I don't know that there is a plan that's already in place for that kind of, you know, infrastructure or capital project related to transit. So I think that I don't know that transit has a huge infrastructure plan already ready to go. So I think that's kind of the problem is COVID comes out of nowhere, and yeah, we might get hundreds of millions of dollars, but I think the planning, you know, we've been scratching for every dollar and cent so long. I think no one expected, oh yeah, COVID's going to come and we're going to get all this CARES money. And so I don't know if we're quite positioned to spend the hundreds of millions of dollars or even a good portion of it on transit. But that is kind of a question for Suzanne too. You know, so if she comes back on, we can also ask her if she knows of any capital projects that are already planned for which, you know, COVID money might work. But thanks for that question. That's a very good point.
Yeah, here, now that I'm at TDOT, a lot of CARES Act money has come through the original CARES Act, the second one, which is called CRISA, and now there's the new one, which is the Recovery Rescue Act. So I think MATA's biggest need is going to be operational funds, as I was saying, to hire those drivers and move the buses and get them on the routes. I do predict that a lot of money will be forthcoming for electrification. I think the current administration is really interested in moving towards some solutions to carbon emissions. So I'm expecting that will happen. It is easier to get capital funding. I won't bore everybody with sort of federal and state capital funding opportunities right now, but MATA has, I believe, 10 electric buses that have been funded, and they're very much aware of sort of needing to get all the infrastructure and charging and buses that they need for that. So yeah, I think that would be coming hot on the heels of the recovery acts that have happened. But I do think that the $35 million in annual operating is a need that's going to remain.
Thank you so much. And I know that Tori also had a question, if you want to ask that.
Yeah, so don't mind me right now. I'm on a balcony outside. But yeah, a question for Mayor Harris is, You know, he was speaking about how much Memphis was spending on transit. He was talking about how his plans included $10 million for Meta. And I was thinking, I was even ready to propose. I don't know, I just thought about this, but I was like, if Memphis was spending so much on transit and the problem was getting people to pay more taxes to go into Memphis Transit, maybe Memphis could build its own city of center of transit, like, you know, maybe something more Memphis local centered. I don't know, make revenue like tourist attractions and all that other stuff. But I feel like that'll be a good way to have something that's more Memphian and more representative of our city, and also like give back to the public while getting back from the public. I'm not really great at economics, but I don't know, sounds like a good bargain. I don't know about I don't know, like, you know, buying the buses. I know those are its own raw material expenses and all the other stuff, but I feel like that'll be a good investment, especially going forward into the next decades. I feel like it'll really, like, you know, I don't know, pay off. So yeah, that's my question to Mayor Harris, or my statement, you know, I don't know.
No, I think that's a great point, and I think there are a lot of different kinds of revenue options for MATA. The problem is the capacity on some of those revenue options, and the flexibility around some of those revenue options. So I mentioned one, car registration fees, and the reason why that's so good as a revenue option is because that particular fee has not been raised in Shelby County for over 20 years. So over 20 years, people have been registering their vehicles and paying the same cost for 20 years. And so if we just raise it a little bit, we have a new revenue source that can be used for transit, and it matches up, right? People that use cars and so forth put wear and tear on the roads, and transit helps relieve some of that wear and tear on the roads because it moves people around, you know, in a mass transit sense. Some of the other ones don't obviously have capacity. Our property tax is the highest in the state. And so it's harder. I'm not saying I'm against it, but it's a harder one to raise, property tax. And for me, investments in property are desirable. In other words, it's desirable for people to buy a house and invest in a home and so forth. And generally, you want to tax things that are less desirable. And so for me, again, I'm only speaking for myself, driving around in the car every day with one person, with all the emissions and all we know about that kind of travel, is not the best way to travel. And so if you car registration fee, you're basically taxing travel by cars. If you do property tax, you're basically taxing home ownership. And so home ownership is pretty desirable, and our home ownership tax is already pretty high. Some of the other stuff that's out there is like you say, there's lots of stuff happening downtown and lots of programs associated with that. Hotel, motel taxes, restaurant taxes, things like that, wine, beer taxes, so forth. A lot of that money's earmarked. So, you know, we could start a coalition to change where that money goes, but that is also a fight because that money goes somewhere right now. And so the people that get that money are going to fight tooth and nail to keep it. And so if you want to take some of that money and redirect it elsewhere, that's the same kind of fight. It's just a fight against the special interests that receive the tax dollars right now. So it's a real tough puzzle. End of the day, the best solution is to keep doing this kind of thing where people are meeting, building out an alliance, because the bigger your alliance, the more you become just unstoppable. And so all these other issues really just fall away. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Our next section is our student testimonials. These are students from around the Memphis area who have direct firsthand experience using the MATA buses. And so we're going to have them speak and share their experiences with you. Ebony, could you go first? Okay. Ebony, if you can hear us, or if you can't unmute, let me know, send me a message. But we will go ahead and we have a student who was going to testify but was unable to make it, but we have a video from him that he wants to share. So we will go ahead and screen share that with you now.
Hello.
Oh, hey. Would you be willing to go ahead and present?
Okay, yeah, I had to step outside of my job. Hold on.
Awesome. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay. So, I'm speaking from the point of riding the bus as like a student and as a working student. And I had to say the bus routes, they're not the best, but they're just, one, they're inconvenient. They don't take you to like where you need to go, or they don't take you close to where you need to go. Like you're gonna be walking for a little minute, or it's too much more to travel with the bus routes, and they're not in the best locations too. So one, like if you're trying to get to Germantown High School, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to get to school, but I had moved out the district, but I wanted to stay at my school because they provided the program that I liked and the program I wanted to be in. So I had to try to find an alternative way to get to school, which ended up becoming the buses. But the buses don't run directly to Germantown or near Germantown. If they run towards Germantown, then you're going to be looking for like an hour walk. So I end up finding a bus route to a school bus. And I used to just sit outside. Like if the bus came at 7, I'll get here at 5 o'clock because it's the only bus that came at the time that I needed to come. So I get here at 5, and I used to just like sit at like a restaurant nearby, maybe McDonald's. They were mainly the only thing that was open at the time of the morning. And then eventually I found a friend that lives like in the apartments that I was getting dropped off at by the bus, ended up staying at her house like until school started. But the buses, they have by far been the most inconvenient thing ever. And I feel like they could be better, but that people don't give it the time of day for it to be better.
Thank you so much. So could you share about how your experience with the bus system? I know you shared with us like eventually you had to like drop out of Germantown High School because you weren't able to get there on the bus.
Yes.
About that?
Eventually I had to stop going. I couldn't like take it. It was just too much. It was stressful getting up in the morning at like 5 o'clock a.m. and I had to work at night. And it became too much. So I just ended up leaving Germantown, and it tore me up because I couldn't take the classes that I wanted to anymore. So I ended up leaving and I went to another school, but eventually I came back once I was able to drive. But still that gap from leaving Germantown was really terrible because other schools don't have an IB program. Other schools don't have the honor courses that Germantown offers. Other schools don't have the U of M courses that Germantown offers. So it was a big downfall for leaving.
Thank you so much, Ebony, for sharing that with us. And if you guys have any questions for her, feel free to drop them in the chat. But we will move on to Toriel, if you would like to present now.
Okay, so as I was telling, let me introduce myself. So I'm Toriel Howard, junior at Kirby High School. But me and Sophia, we were speaking before this transit discussion, and I was telling her about all the different types of transportations I use, especially due to the inconvenience of the bus system. Like at point of times, I rode bikes, I've had a skateboard, I on a scooter, ripstick, everything all in between. And it's like we have to get to those type of alternatives because there isn't a lot of access when it comes to public transit. As Dr. Carson and Ebony were talking about, they're not exactly precise. Like some areas do not even have some areas don't even have access to like public transits. Like you can get a bus stop dropped off on the main street, but you live on one of the back streets on the far end, and you walk in for another hour. And that also goes into economics, because if you're being late due to bus times and bus fares, like you always gotta give money to the bus to the buses, so you can't get your own vehicle, for number one. And secondly, if they're late, then you're late, and it's a domino effect. And so you can't really depend on something so inconvenient to provide for yourself from. And so I have an example. It was one time I was trying to order some Chick-fil-A. This may not be transportation, but they said they didn't deliver to the area I was trying to get my food delivered to, which was my dear home. So I felt a little hurt. I was a little hurt because I was like, I want some Chick-fil-A. And it turns out that a lot of places didn't deliver close to my home. And a lot of bus stations and those sorts of public transit, they didn't stop close. And so people in my neighborhood and in poverty in case neighborhoods have to rely on more expensive transits like Lyft and Uber, and they go about $30 a ride depending on where you're trying to go. And for an average Memphian, it would be work. So like I said, again, it goes into economics. You constantly outputting money. That's all like that's your rent money, that's going to transit to get to work. There's not a real revenue you making. And so like, as they were saying earlier, that is kind of like putting a lot of Memphians and a lot of low class citizens in this cycle of poverty. But yeah, I do feel like this may not be a direct transportational solution, but for those of you who do not know what Memphis has a nickname for, it is also called the land of potholes. And it's called that because a lot of Memphians have lost cars and a lot of vehicles have lost wheels to potholes in Memphis. And it gets really bad on the famous street of Elvis Presley and Lamar. And I feel like if we had more money put into like infrastructure, maintaining roads, transportation, all of that, it intertwines eventually. Like all of the businesses here intertwine, especially with Memphis being a hotspot and a tourist attraction. We need to work on like the inner things, like the roads, like the small things, like, you know, it even goes down to the advertising, what you see on buses that attracts people to like get on them. It'd be the small things. So yeah, coming from a Memphian, I mean, now I have a vehicle, but before that, it was no guarantee. It's just, I wasn't sure. There was too much uncertainty around my daily life that anybody can go without. And it definitely is stressful coming from a student, worker, college student. It doesn't really help when it comes to school, because I've been late a couple of times in middle school to school waiting on the bus, which would come like up to 30 minutes late, early in the morning, like 50 degrees outside, 6:30 in the morning, late. And so those are some things that a lot of students and a lot of people in Memphis in general is dealing with. And I feel like if we were to divert our attention there, then we would have a lot more progress concerning the urbanization, if I said that word correctly, the urbanization of Memphis. And so I end my case.
Thank you so much. I remember you also were mentioning like the sanitary conditions of the bus when you were speaking. Do you want to say something about that?
Oh yeah. Right. So I do kind of travel a little bit, and I had went to Denver, Colorado. And when I was down there, I noticed that they were providing free transit to their citizens. They wasn't charging. All you needed to have was a mask, and you was free to go wherever you needed to go. And they were pretty clean. And so, I feel like they really intertwined with the health, which also Professor Blumenthal, if I remember the name correctly, Professor Blumenthal, he was saying the health, it all correlates. Like, COVID is going on, and that's a prime concern you have when it comes to these bus stations. But in Memphis, like the sanitization of Memphis buses can definitely be better. And I mean, I just seen all types of stuff. And like, I don't mean to be bold and vulgar on this app, but downtown Memphis, I didn't see like rats so big. I didn't see different rodents in the like I didn't see like dead animals. It'd be a lot of stuff. And it's almost like it's just so what's the word I'm looking for? It's a D word. Let me see. Like, it's deplorable. Some of the conditions are deplorable, and it's really suited for poverty in case environments, as I said earlier. And like the first step of getting Memphis out of the funk that it's in is, we gotta walk better. We gotta get to our jobs faster. We gotta be able to depend on an environment so that we can be able to flourish. And I feel like that'll be the first step to becoming a greater city. But yeah.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Next, we have Edwin, who is unable to come, but we will screen share his video with you all.
Hello, my name is Edwin Cole, and I am a sophomore at Manassas.
I don't think I can hear.
Things that I saw on the bus rides made me think of.
My bad. I muted myself because I thought that there might be an echo, but I think I have to be unmuted for you guys to hear it. So.
Hello, my name is Edwin Cole, and I am a sophomore at Manassas High School. The reason I'm speaking to you today is to talk about public transportation and share my experiences and thoughts on ways to better it. Growing up, the city bus was the only way me and my family can get from place to place. The things that I saw on the bus rides made me think of ways on how we, as a community, can better our public transportation. For example, one day I was riding the bus going to school, and this man walked on the bus being all erratic and loud and whatnot. But nobody did anything, not the bus driver, nor adult, not anybody. As I sat there hearing that man keep screaming and yelling, thoughts were going through my mind on what can we do as a community to stop people like him and many others act up on the bus and start acting accordingly to the bus rules. So what I thought up in my head was that there should be laws implemented to where if a passenger is acting out of control, drivers have the right to remove them off the bus. That way, passengers who are obeying the laws and respecting the law get to their destination safely and without damage being done. Another example on ways we can change public transportation is by having a designated spot to where only elderly and people with disabilities can sit. I witnessed this happen back when I was little. There was this elderly couple getting on the bus, and there were people sitting in seats that were meant for the elderly, and nobody moved for them. Imagine you are elderly or disabled and you cannot stand for long periods of time. And when you finally get on the bus to sit down, no one wants to get up and offer you a seat. So you have to walk all the way to the back of the bus just to sit down. How would you feel if that were you and you had to walk all the way to the back of the bus just to sit down? You would be a little hurt and angry because no one could see how hard you were struggling and hurting just to rest your feet for a couple of minutes. So, what I came up in my mind were to have seats specifically designated for elderly and disabled people. That way, they can have quick and easy access to a seat so that they won't have to put that much strain on their legs. I thank you all for letting me take this time to express how I feel about this situation, and I hope I persuaded some people to rise and act against this and make our city transit safer for all people. Thank you all, and God bless.
How do we stop sharing this? Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, so those are our student speakers. Let me check and see if Cynthia Bailey has returned. Okay. She's not back right now, so we will open the floor for public questions and comments. So if you have a question or a comment on the meeting, go ahead and type your name in the chat and we can unmute you.
And again, thank you to all of our speakers.
Yeah, you guys are awesome.
Y'all are awesomer.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay. Well,
So we'll give them a few more minutes to type things out if they have to. Long, hypothetically. Oh, okay. Nabil, do you have a question?
Well, I don't have a question, but I can make a remark regarding this the dialogue and the conversation. We have to move from the we have to move the conversation into the issue of the whole public transportation that involves a different aspect of really our life, especially as I mentioned, actually for the global warming and the climate change and all of this. So we have to really put this public transportation in close relation with the with the climate change issue, and tackle it from that point as well. Poverty is a very, very important issue as well, and poverty is still also part of climate change. One of the solutions to climate change is really to relieve poverty. So we still talking about the same issue, but we have to really get the climate change and global warming and carbon dioxide, fossil fuel, all of this within the same dialogue. If we do this, then maybe we can start, more and more people will start paying attention instead of saying that this is only an issue for the bus rider. Yeah. So when we just talk about riding the bus and taking the bus, which I know is very, very hectic. I mean, I used it a few times only for the sake of getting the experience of what a person has to use a bus. What do they have to go through? And I know I wouldn't. I mean, thank you, Tori, for sharing your thoughts, and Aiden for sharing his thoughts. It's a major, major issue for those who must use it, and nobody's going to use the bus unless they really, really, really have to do it. So that's an issue. But also the other issue is the the climate change and the global warming. So if we tie these things together and try, make people think about that, it is really the future. It is really the future. The future really very much dependent on public transportation. And for Mayor Harris, I know I am at Lemoyne College and I am at University of Memphis. The very first thing people ask is, how is public transportation in Memphis? If they want to move here to Memphis. And we have to play around the issue, like, what you have to do and all of these things, because we don't want to really say exactly what public transportation is like in Memphis. So public transportation, if we want to attract people to come to Memphis and work in Memphis and be happy here, just like any place else, which I know all of us want that to happen, then also we have to work on public transportation and improve them, make them more reliable. So the issue, I think, we have to really, it's very, very branched and entangled at the same time. And we have to bring it from all aspects, so let everybody in the community be involved. I know it was a statement, took too much time, but thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. That was really well put and really insightful. That is definitely a big thing we need to consider because it for sure intersects with environmentalism a lot. I see that Dennis Lynch has his hand up. Dennis, do you want to speak?
Okay, thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Sophia and Jude, for setting this up. Thank you for the speakers, Suzanne and Greg and Mayor Harris. Thank you for the students and others that have spoken. I want to hear more people speaking out, and I'm going to stop speaking in just a moment. But if you're here in this room and you're listening and you have thoughts about transit, speak up, please, because the more people that speak up and say, we need transit and this is why we need transit and it's important for the city, the more people that say that, our elected officials are going to hear it and they're going to start saying, yes, we need to allocate more money. This is what we're trying to do is, what all of us that are here and others, we want to help MATA and the city of Memphis and Shelby County to allocate more money for transit. So speak up, don't be shy. We're all friends here. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, please do speak up if you have something to say or if you have thoughts. And Mr. Arnold, I see that you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. And let me just say yes to everything Dennis just said. Micah's transit equity team has been working over a year with Mayor Harris and other county commissioners to encourage county funding for the first time. And frankly, with Mayor Harris's help, I do believe we've been successful. The challenge is to the incremental change is while we need to do that on one level, we've really got to push hard to get the full Transit 3.0 funded. It won't all come from the county and it won't all come from the city, but the city could do more and the county could do more. But let me say, first off, this is great to have the young voices around the table. And there will be many more opportunities over the next year to have your voices join forces with Micah and Sierra Club and others to raise that political will Mayor Harris is talking about. And he's absolutely correct. And we have been talking with Sierra Club about how Micah can get back into their 71 member organizations and work with Justin from Innovate Memphis to do focus groups to raise awareness and to enthuse people to support transit. Transit is in every single person's self-interest. The 98% or maybe 95% don't realize that yet, but together we can make them understand. It will help us bring industry to Memphis. It will help create jobs. It will help low-income people get better paying jobs and reduce poverty. We've just got to make the case for it so that people don't mind paying a few extra bucks on their wheel tax or whatever tax or revenue streams we tap into. And the last thing I'll say very briefly is tomorrow night we are having the Vanderhaar Symposium, and we have the Policy Link people from Oakland, California, Angela Glover Blackwell and Michael McAfee will be speaking to. Right now over 400 people are registered, and they will be sharing strategies for equity, including transit equity. And I hope all of you can join us. Duffy Marie is online and she might be able to put the link in for you to register if she would please. But we hope all of you can join us tomorrow night. And again, that will be recorded and we will give it to the mayors. We will give it to every political person to see how many people are enthused about fighting for equity in this city, including transit equity. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Let me see who's next. Greg Blumenthal had a question for Suzanne Carlson.
Yes, Suzanne, you had mentioned that population density is an issue. The city of Memphis has a population density of about 2,000 per square mile. What do you think is the cutoff for population density in order to merit the kind of comprehensive transit system that we are envisioning? I don't expect Memphis to have to be able to pull off. Sure enough, I mentioned Monterrey, Mexico. Monterrey has roughly the same population, maybe a little larger, but it does have a significantly greater population density. Where is the population density cutoff before we can start talking about any form of political efficiency of a transit system?
Thanks for the question. I was speaking specifically to light rail, which is a pretty expensive infrastructure proposition. So Memphis is absolutely well suited to have high quality transit and to have a high frequency network. The map that I showed earlier has the 4 high frequency routes where the bus would come every 10 to 15 minutes, and that would crisscross, give you those 2 crosstown routes, so 2 north-south and 2 east-west. I didn't show you, but in our full report, there's a whole bunch of maps for 15 different community areas that show where you can get in an hour. So it shows, and you can think about this as freedom, right? So it shows like where you can get to in an hour today, and then how much further you can get in the newly designed network. And again, that's a $35 million proposition each year that needs to be repeated to get that. But no, Memphis is absolutely deserves, should have, needs high quality transit. I was just differentiating if we want to have a light rail. And I think we're working our way there because the Union Avenue will have what's called bus rapid transit. So quicker boarding, fewer stops, just really moving people quickly so that transit becomes competitive with driving. Yeah, so I'll just stop there. Maybe if someone can Google real quick, light rail density, then they could add that part of the conversation. But I'm not sure I know. I would say probably 6,000 plus people per square mile.
Thank you so much. Justin Davis, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, I would. So, yeah, first of all, I wanna thank y'all for putting this together. I want to thank all the speakers, and I especially want to thank all the students who spoke today. So my name is Justin Davis. I'm the secretary of the Memphis Bus Riders Union. My my friend Cynthia was here earlier, and I just wanted to just like briefly build a little bit on what she said and just kind of reiterate why having the voice of bus riders is so important in conversations like these. Because a big reason why our group exists is because we have found that in so many of these discussions that happen around how to improve public transit, that even though we often have to build the case, right, for why transit is important to people who don't ride the bus, at the same time, bus riders are so often completely left out of these conversations. And so what happens is that we often get situations where decisions are being made about the transit system that do not actually reflect the needs of the people who actually use them. So, I especially just want to just really name that for the students here who have talked about the issues that you've experienced using MATA and these issues with access, that these are things that people who use MATA have been talking about for years on end, right? Like everybody who uses the bus regularly sort of has this understanding that if you are a person of color, if you're a working class, if you have a disability, that MATA does not work equally for you. And so I think, I just really wanted to uplift that and just to really kind of name in this conversation that the reason why it's so important to have conversations like these is because the experience that you have as bus riders is really a form of expertise that is just as important as the expertise of planners and politicians in this room. So I just really wanted to name that and thank you again for bringing your testimonies here.
Thank you so much, Justin. We appreciate it. Sylvia Crum, would you like to say something or ask a question?
Thanks very much. My name is Sylvia Crum, and I run the Commute Options Program at Innovate Memphis. So we're regularly talking with employees and students about how they can move around our county, not in a single occupancy vehicle, but using transit and bicycling and carpooling and other modes. So I'm also really grateful to you all, you students, for putting this together tonight and raising this issue in your part of the community and having this conversation. I had just a comment, and then I also had a question. I wanted to mention that in the 2019-2020 school year, I got to go along as MATA and Shelby County Schools piloted free bus passes to high schoolers. It was a very small pilot for the amount of high schoolers that SCS has, but they did give out free passes to the students, to some students and some guardians. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that full pilot didn't get to happen. And I was really looking forward to hearing the feedback from students and their parents and guardians about how that helped them move about the city on transit. And actually, Tori, I don't know if you got to participate in that program or not, but I was interested if you happen to know of anyone who had received one of those passes, if you might speak to that. But I did just want to highlight that was a pilot that was done. And then of course, COVID hit. I hope that's something that maybe students could speak up to of looking to do things like that again, having our school systems be able to support students and their guardians for moving around our city. But the other question that I had for you students and you organizers of this event tonight, what are ways that you might think that we could engage our high profile people in Memphis? Because I know that as I've gone along to some of the conversations that Mayor Harris and the county commissioners had and others who have looked for funding for MATA, those conversations have been good and business leaders have come and said, yes, we support funding for better transit. But I find that there's a lack of high profile, our famous people or our companies that you students would support with your dollars. Are they coming up and saying, we too support transit and we want to spend our dollars there and we want to be on the buses moving around our city that way? And I just wondered, maybe it's really a question of where do you all see, what are your next steps? Because I know that you talked about with the name of your group that it's Stopping Poverty with Policy. I'd like to hear a little bit more of like what's next for you all and I would encourage you, but I also would maybe kind of, prompt you to consider, would you use your dollars, you're spending dollars in our county to encourage businesses or other high profile people to also join this conversation and start supporting our transit. And I'd love if, you could just speak a little bit to kind of what's next for you all. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll let Tori answer your question first, but yeah, after that, we would absolutely love to answer that. Yes.
So I'm sorry, but what was the name of your program?
So I run the commute options program at Innovate Memphis, and I just went along with MATA and Shelby County Schools as they passed out some of the bus passes in the fall of 2019.
Well, okay, I don't know exactly if it was a certain program you employ, if it had a certain name, but I know I have used the MATA bus in relation with going to school. It was free, so I guess that's a program, So yeah, I guess it was nice. It was late often.
Sure.
But the lady, she kept her bus clean. I can respect that. Respect to the bus drivers.
Well, I appreciate you speaking to that, Tori. And again, I just wanted to highlight, I thought it was so impactful for you to be able to share that you used buses, but found that your example of being in a neighborhood that maybe restaurants aren't delivering to, and then also recognizing that it's hard for the buses to get there and that you don't have that full access. I think that's really impactful for folks to hear of what we're really talking about. Of course, our buses aren't going to be able to go everywhere right now because we've underfunded our bus system, but we need the buses to serve the areas that we say that they could serve and then grow from there. And so I appreciate you sharing that with us tonight.
Never a problem.
So to answer your question, Jude and I would love to get high profile people involved, but our next step is after this, we are going to try and form a Memphis Transit Reform Alliance, because anyone who is a part of transit activism knows that there's a lot of groups pushing for the same basic goals, and everyone is very well intentioned, but there's little to no, there's not very much organization between the groups, and there's not one coalition of transit groups where everyone is getting together and discussing moving in the same direction. And so we think it would be probably very helpful to have a once-a-month meeting and a coalition of all the transit reform groups, so that we're all on the same page and we can all put our resources in the same direction so we get more done. Because there's enough advocacy for transit reform to have it reformed, but there's not enough organization and there's not enough working together. So then once we have that step, we would definitely like to kind of use that momentum of teaming up with other groups who are working towards transit reform to try and get those high profile groups on board, because just kind of the whole strength in numbers thing. If we can unite together, then we can go to that next step. Yeah. And Arik, would you like to say something or ask a question?
Yeah, so first of all, is my mic working?
Yeah, it's working. You're good to start.
Okay, wonderful. So to answer a question, because I'm also a student, because I'm also part of the organization, but to answer the question, I think that a good place to look toward would be, just like Sophia said, organizations, and to make sure that the goals of all of these different transit reform organizations are in line, and that we are synchronous in our goals. But also I think for bringing high profile people into the conversation and having them be aware about these problems that we face in transportation, I think that's something that can be addressed by business support, because I feel that's something that's in common between those who advocate for transit reform and improvement and high profile people, because businesses is something that is strongly impacted by transit. I think that's pretty evident, but I think that probably gaining business support is something that is in common between transit reform activists and also high profile people. So if we can get more support on that, I think that's a good place to start.
Absolutely, that was super well put and insightful. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have questions or comments?
I was gonna comment on one thing.
Absolutely, go ahead.
And it was on what I don't want to say this name wrong, but Mr. Bayakli said, Mr. Bayakli, and it was about basically the energy, green, conservative, eco-friendly methods of transportation. I also did want to capitalize on that because I myself, like, I like to call myself a planetarian. Like, you know, I feel like the best interest for anybody on this planet is the best interest, planet, I said planet, is the best interest for anybody is for the planet too. So, I mean, I feel like we do have to conserve this ozone layer, like, you know, and actually we produce more CO2 emissions when we're in our own individual cars. I mean, I know it sounds hypocritical coming from a personal vehicle owner, but you know, maybe conveniency. I don't know. I feel a little guilty now. But I feel like if public transportation like buses were made a bit more flexible and convenient and dependable, I feel like a lot more people will be on board with using transportation. And also this is a random fact, but it's pretty relevant or irrelevant. But Amsterdam, somewhere overseas, I don't know, but they use like their primary use of transportation is bicycles. And it kind of caught me off guard because it was like 90% of the population of Amsterdam use bicycles. And so I had to think about it and I was like, okay, transportation really can be a cultural thing. So I feel like advertising some kind of health messages or something could possibly move public into action. But you know, I feel like if our primary focuses are like of the environment, I feel like good things will come out regardless, you know. So that was a remark.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. Okay. I'll wait a few moments if anyone else has questions. And if not, we can go ahead and wrap this up. Does anyone else have comments or questions? And instead of typing it in the chat, you can just raise your hand. So, yeah. Okay, we have someone. Oh, Mihika, would you like to say something?
Yes. So backboarding on what Ms. Howard said with bicycles and things like that being a cultural effect on public transportation, I thought that was a really good idea because just like what Arik was saying earlier with how we can get high profile people involved, we could really invest in like expanding our social media presence, news agencies, getting the word out as much as possible to make it more of like a community impact, like, you know, making it seem like everyone is in this together, not just, you know, a small group or an alliance. If we spread a message to make sure that we're including everyone, it'll be easier for everyone to transition and to help saving the ecosystem and promoting public transit and things like that. And I think it's really important that we start investing in public transit because not only are we going to help the current population right now that are in need of transportation for getting to their jobs, to schools, things like that, we also need to improve the infrastructure for the future generations because we can't have problems like, you know, lack of bus routes, lack of buses, and things like that for people of all ages for such a long time. You know, we need to like stand up and improve with what we have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that was very well put.
So, Mr. Nabil, you have your hand raised. Would you like to comment?
Yes. First, for Tori, you did say my name very beautifully, so thank you. That was the right thing to say. I want to thank everybody actually, and I was very excited that this was done from high school students, high schoolers, because really they are the one who will be impacted more in the future. So I really applaud you, and I want, you know, whatever I can help you keep on pushing for this. You are the future policymakers. From you, all the future elected officials will come. So if you, among your peers, actually keep on talking like this, hopefully we'll have people elected to the right positions with the right mind, and those who don't deny the rights of other individuals just because really they made it to the top and they have their own money and they don't care about others basically. So I really, really applaud you and thank you from the bottom of my heart for all what you're doing. And I'll stop right there.
That means so much. And thank you so much for coming and commenting and giving your insight. It means a lot to us. We appreciate it. Mr. Lynch, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I've always got stuff to say, but I'll be short. I'm starting to write a note in the chat about a couple of organizations locally that are related to bicycle and pedestrian issues. If people want to know more about them, they can look at what I type in the chat. Hopefully the chat window won't be closed before people get a chance to look at it and whatever. Some of the names of these organizations are a little bit long, and I don't remember the names of their websites and such, but I'm going to put the information there. And if anybody wants to know more, they can send a message to Sophia, and she can contact me and I can get you the information. Or you can send directly to me. I just didn't want to put I'm trying to put all this other information in, so I'm not going to I'll put my email address in there too if you want. So anyhow, that's my comment. Again, thanks everybody for your participation. This is fantastic.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for giving the information to everyone. Mihika, I see your hand still up. Did you have something else you'd like to say?
No, I have nothing else to say, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have anyone else with questions or comments? We will gladly take them.
I put some in the chat. I don't want to be talking too much, like be too talkative. But Makima, did I say it right?
Mahika.
I saw you. Mahika inspired me. Like when she was talking about, well, she kind of she elaborated on what I was saying, but like after she said something particular, I thought about it. I was like, well, if we did want to combine high profile figures and like, you know, promoting transit, I was like, maybe you could arrange like a biking event and invite like high profile figures to maybe expand the presence and awareness of the youth transit. And, you know, that's like, you know, combining the social presence of Memphis and also like, you know, the awareness of the transit. And I mean, I think it'd be pretty fun. I'll go if y'all did it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So if no one else has any questions, and if you do have a question, just put your hand up and we will absolutely get to you. But thank you for coming to the Youth Voices Transit discussion. It was wonderful to have you all here. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for participating. I hope that you learned some more about the transit problem in Memphis and about what is being done and what can be done. Jude and I put our email and our website in the chat. So if you have questions for us, or you want information, or you want to get involved, just email us at stoppovertywithpolicy@gmail.com, and that's in the chat. And if you want to learn more about what we're doing, you can go to our website, which is stoppovertywithpolicy.com. We'll leave a few more moments in the meeting in case someone has questions, or if you'd like to get the information from the chat. But otherwise, thank you for coming, and it was lovely to have you all here. Oh, we have 2 new messages, so we'll make sure that those aren't questions. They are not. Okay, yeah, so thanks for coming, and we appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Be safe.
Information in the chat window about bicycle and pedestrian issues.
Thank you. I saw Mr. Lynch. Sorry, I didn't know how to dress. But thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you for hosting this.
Jude and Sophia, that was amazing.